Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and today is the Offlane tier list for patch 7.39c, and just like the mid lane tier list, it didn't change a ton. It just some heroes got bumped up, maybe a spot or two, some got bumped down, and then there are a couple drastic ones that we'll get into as well. But honestly, starting off the S tier, it's mostly the same, and the first hero we have is Axe. This hero is still good, it's amazing. You can actually pick both facets, they're actually really good. And people have been experimenting more with Battle Hunger maxed. I would not really do that. I think I maybe even said that in the last tier list. I wouldn't really do that. I would still just go with Berserker's Call, just going into the Blade Mail, going for your Blink, maybe get a Vanguard before that here or there, sometimes, some games. But for the most part, it's Axe, doing all the same thing. This hero is insane. This hero has an amazing laning stage. You can always cut waves. You can farm jungle super fast. This obvious BKB stun is just ridiculous at all portions of the game. The slow ends up getting crazy. The Ags is still really good. The Shard is still obviously really good too. Just everything about the hero is great. Honestly, pure damage is great. Do I need to say more? I mean, I've said enough about the hero from talking about it since it's been good for a long time now. And I think even when it's not good in the meta, it's still great in pubs. I just think what it does is so good for pubs. It's just such a reliable offlaner, tanky in the lane, decent, reliable lane. Does have some matchup issues at times, but it's fine. You can always come back in the jungle. Has a great timing with Blink Call, with Blade Mail. Always has impact in the game. BKB piercing stun, but you can also like solo carry the game by just doing insane amounts of damage yourself. So I think it's just like a perfect pub hero. Then the next perfect pub hero again is Legion Commander, another perfect pub hero in general that's been great for a long, long time. I always say this every time, ever since they changed what the overwhelming odds and the press the attack do, since they switched attack speed and movement speed, it's just been an amazing hero. No matter how many times they nerf it, it feels like it always comes back into the meta. And I just think overall, this is still an S tier hero for pubs. Even if it's not the best in the highest level or pro, it's still so good in pubs just because you solo carry the game, but you're also an initiator, also a great offlaner. You also have a save. You have everything you really want. And again, if you look at the win rates of both of these facets, you can actually pick both of them. It's kind of one of those things where when this Stone Hall plate came out, a year or two ago, it was broken. But actually, I think this one might be better now. I've seen people going for it a lot more, and obviously if you just make sure that you win the duels, this is actually really, really good for your team. So in a lot of different cases, I would actually pick this because this thing is really only good at the laning stage, and sometimes it feels like it does nothing. So I'd actually be going for this more often than not, and I think that's one of the things that's keeping this hero in the meta in S tier, especially in pubs. Then next we have a little bit of a new hero, which is Mars. I think this hero was A last time. Now it's S. I think it's just overall the win rate is really, really good. The pick rate is still great. It always gets picked a ton. And I think just in general, this is a great hero. And when it has a good win rate, that means it's broken because it always has a terrible win rate because it's getting picked so much. It's like Pudge. Mars and Pudge are two heroes, maybe even like a Jug as a carry. There are just certain heroes in the game that always get picked no matter how good they are just because people like to play them, and Mars is one of those heroes. So a lot of times, honestly, even when it's a good Mars patch, the win rate is sticking around like 47%, but now in certain brackets, it's past 50, which means it's a very, very good hero. And just like some of the other heroes, you can actually go for both facets here. Bloodsport is the one that is kind of typical in the sense of like it's just always going to be good, just having that vision advantage, but you can definitely go for this. It's a little bit of an awkward one, but you can still go for it and it can still be good. But if you just want the default one, you can still go with Bloodsport. But yeah, Mars does everything that he's always done, has a decent, reliable laning stage, great initiation. You can go for damage if you want with Deso and stuff, if you want to solo to carry the game and you're low MMR, or if you're high MMR, you can go for more of that just utility build with like a Blink and a Yules and a Refresher and a BKB. You can just do all that, and then you're just a menace in team fights that, the enemy just can't really deal with. And so that's Mars, just a very good hero right now. Again, kind of bumped up with a lot of other things kind of being bumped down a little bit, because even the other S tier heroes at times have been nerfed here and there. It's just not been enough to actually, take them out of the S tier. And then next we have Dawnbreaker, and again, this is another one of those heroes that's been around for a while, and actually all three facets, again, are pickable, and I think that's kind of one of the things we're seeing, especially from these offlaners, and even like Queen of Pain and mid, where if you have multiple good facets that allow you to play slightly different ways, it just really benefits the hero because now it's dynamic. You can pick the hero, but then if you feel like it's a good game for this facet or that facet, you can switch it up. And so if you look at Dota 2 Pro Tracker and you look at the win rates, all these facets have decent win rates, even if there's only the two facets that have not the best pick rate. Like there is one facet that's the most popular one, and that's obvious. But despite the fact that everyone is picking Solar Charge, that doesn't mean you can't go for these other two. But this is just the most popular one, has actually technically kind of a lower win rate than these other, but that's just because it's more popular. But all three of these are actually not that bad. So, but you can just go with the default solar charged if you want to. Hey guys, just wanted to take a quick second to remind you, I'm streaming every Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Links to my Twitch and Kick are in the description. Also, every Friday, I host a 1v1 mid tournament where the winner gets $25 and a random viewer also gets $25. So don't forget to follow there. Also, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and now let's get back to the video. Then next we have A tier, and first I have Centaur here. You might be thinking, and it is debatable, I kind of was debating whether putting this hero in S tier or not. I think it was in S tier last time. I'm just not the biggest fan of Centaur. I think it just has games where it feels like it has no impact because it can be ignored sometimes. Sometimes you can do decent damage when you get Shivas and you get a million HP and you get your shard and all that kind of stuff, but I personally, for pubs, just like these heroes a little bit better. I think if you want to say Centaur's S, you could totally put that. That's why I put it first. That's why I wanted to talk about it first. It's a great blade mail buyer, which is still very, very good. Probably one of the best, if not the best item in the game right now. So that makes sense why you would maybe consider this hero S tier. And again, nothing really has changed about the hero all that much. I'm just not personally as big of a fan. I think there are games where it doesn't have as big of an impact. And sometimes I feel like your laning stage can just suffer and you can kind of do nothing if you don't have a good support to pair with or you're in a countered matchup. And these range carries are really, really good these days. And sometimes Centaur just has a trouble, laning against them, approaching the wave and stuff like that. If you're against a Drow, that you're just getting hit a bunch. But obviously later in the game, if you can jump on something like a Drow, that can be good. But still, I'm just not the biggest fan, like I said, of that hero. So I think it is still very good. You can still reliably pick it, and it's still A, so it's still definitely decent. I personally love Earthshaker, kind of the opposite of Centaur in the sense that Earthshaker, you could maybe argue it's a B hero, but I personally really like it. I think especially in pubs, it's one of those where your early, laning stage, your early levels aren't really that strong, so you need to get levels in the hero, but I just don't think in a lot of pub situations that the enemy's going to be taking advantage of your weaknesses. I think you can get by to get to level 3, 4, 5, 6, and those kinds of things, and then from there, if you have a good laning stage, you can absolutely pop off on the hero. That's really the only weakness of Earthshaker in the offlane is that you're a little bit weak in the early part of the lane. And then otherwise, I just love the hero as a core. It's really great. I think you can absolutely dominate pubs with it, so that's why I put Earthshaker at A. It also has a decent pick rate and win rate. Same thing with Slardar in terms of I really like the hero in pubs. I think this hero can absolutely stomp. Again, has some bad matchups, especially against ranged heroes, which are fairly possible or popular these days. So just be wary. But you can still usually survive and then get a few items and then you just absolutely own. And especially when you pair it with any kind of right-click carry, which you're obviously going to have a lot of these days, that minus armor is insane. You can obviously take Roche really well. I think it's just overall a great pub stomping hero as long as you get off to somewhat of a good start. Like I said, sometimes if you get off to a very, very bad start, have a very bad lane and can't like flash farm because this hero doesn't really flash farm until, getting shard and stuff like that, then you can have a really bad game. That's why I think this hero isn't necessarily super popular and isn't S tier, but I personally still love it in pubs because I think getting that good game is still fairly reliable. And then Tide, I would say Tide got bumped up a tier. I think I put Tide in B tier like a few months ago before the bigger patches. This hero was S tier. It was getting picked all the time. Both facets were great. Then it got nerfed a bunch, kind of dropped down into B, but then with a little bit of a shakeup in the C patch, I think it bumped back up to A. I still would say it's very good as a reliable offlaner. Not as popular as it once was. Maybe you could still argue that it is B tier, but I think the win rate speaks for itself, and I think it is pretty good right now. So I think you definitely can pick Tide. You can still pick both facets, honestly, just depending on the situation. It's hard to say which one is definitively better because it's not as popular. It's not getting spammed. You can go for the carry one, like when he starts out small and grows bigger and stuff like that. You can still go for that one, especially I think the lower MMR you are, the more effective that one is because then you kind of become more of a carry in some ways. But then if you want to go for the full tanky, utilize like utility build and team fight and stuff like that, you can totally go for the other facet as well. Then we have Kunkka, who is still up here, A tier. Again, this one's on the downtrend, I think, somewhat like other heroes. I even think I talked about it in the mid lane. I think it's just on the downtrend in general. I still think, though, that it can have good laning stages. The boat is still great team fight, and I just don't like it off lane in terms of the Radiance buying. That's a little bit awkward. You don't usually go Radiance on this hero if you're going off lane, but you can still go Blade Mail and you can still go Ags and you can still go those other builds, which makes it still viable and still A tier. And as long as you have damage coming from somewhere else and you can reliably hit the boat or the double boat with the Ags, this hero is absolutely insane. And in certain games, you just pop off and your team becomes unkillable and this team fight is just ridiculous. But then in other games, it feels like there's too much mobility and it's hard to hit your boats. And in that case, it can feel a little bit awkward. Then Abaddon, this might be a controversial pick for A tier. I just personally think that Abaddon is maybe the opposite of a Kunkka, kind of on the upswing, and people are still underestimating. I even put it pretty high in the carry tier list, and I think it definitely deserves that even in the off lane. Maybe a year ago, it was very good. People were picking it off lane, and people were picking it carry a bunch, and then it kind of disappeared a little bit, and then recently got buffs that I think make it, able to play this core role really well and not just a support, and I think it's underrated in a way. And when you look at the win rate, it has a very, very good win rate despite not getting picked all that much. So I still think Abaddon deserves this, but again, you could argue maybe B tier. Then Marcy, another one on the upswing. I think this hero is pretty good right now as an offlaner. I was one that was underestimating Marcy, but again, I think that this hero's win rate speaks for itself in the sense, even though it's not getting picked a ton. I think offlane really is the position for Marcy. And I kind of would consider like Abaddon and Marcy, these offlaners that are like carries. Obviously, you have the Legion Commander that's like a carry, but I think a lot of these offlaners now these days are a little bit more team fight. Yes, they can do a lot of damage. They do a lot of different things. The days of Wraith King, he's on the downtrend. The days of like Bristleback on the downtrend, even Timbersaw, kind of just been stagnating in the middle there. But I do think that if you want more of a carry-centric kind of hero, you can pick an Abaddon, you can pick a Marcy, and they can definitely do well in the offlane while being a sort of just like, do a lot of right-click, run in, but be tanky, and do stuff with your team. Not as much of a team fight hero. These are two very good ones. And then Pudge overall, offlane's probably the best position for the hero, and I still think it definitely is viable. And I just put it up here because whenever this has a great win rate, kind of like Mars, I think it deserves to be A tier, because if you look at the win rate, it is actually very, very good compared to what it usually is when it's getting picked all the time, because this hero just gets picked all the time no matter what. So usually Mars and Pudge are sitting around like below 50%, even 45% win rate if they're just not good. And if they're not good, I mean like C or B tier. If they're absolutely abysmal, they'll have like a 30% win rate just because they get picked so much anyway. And so if it has above 50, which these heroes do in certain situations, in certain brackets, it definitely deserves to be up here. It's very, very good. Even though I do think that there are certain games where Pudge can fall off and feel really bad. If there's a lot of minus armor, a lot of right click, a lot of this like doesn't really care about your damage block, doesn't really care about your like anti-magic stuff, then it can feel like Pudge just is too squishy. And in those cases, it can feel bad. But other games, a lot of magic damage and stuff, it can feel like Pudge just clicks his passive or whatever, and he just becomes unkillable. Like, he takes 0 damage from himself and from anyone else. I know his previous passive, I always forget what it's called, but let me just look at it. I always forget this. Yeah, Meat Shield, because I thought it was like Flesh Heap or whatever, but that's this now, so I always forget that this is called Meat Shield. But anyway, not to digress too much. Yeah, I think Pudge is very good. Just certain games, certain matchups with a lot of right-clicking, and feel like he melts. Then next we have B tier, and Bristleback was either A or S, maybe even S. This hero was very, very good, and then got pretty big nerfs. I think Bristleback or DP were the ones that got the biggest nerfs in the recent patch, and so it dropped off pretty significantly. I would say that offlane is still a decent position for Bristleback. I still think it's an okay hero. It's just not broken or very good like it once was. It just got pretty significant nerfs just overall, and both facets are not as good. Obviously, the Seeing Red is more of a carry one anyway, and then the Snot Rocket's been nerfed a lot, so I just think that it deserves B. You can still totally pick it, you can get away with it, but it's not the best. And the same thing with Undying. This hero was on the upswing, kind of the hero of the patch in the B patch, then the C patch came and kind of killed the hero. That was one of those. It didn't seem like the patch was huge, but the nerfs were significant enough that obviously I think DP, as you will see later, and I already talked about it in the mid lane, kind of was the most hard hit by the C patch, but Undying was right up there because it was probably S tier-ish, maybe if not A last time, and now it kind of is on the downturn. People aren't picking it nearly as much, and when they are picking it, it's just below 50% win rate. So I still think it's good, but it's just not nearly what it was. Then Timbersaw, I think, is right there with Bristleback. It's just kind of right in the mid of the pack. It's just good, can carry the game solo in a lot of different situations. Gets very tanky, very annoying to deal with, but doesn't have the typical like initiation, like, Mars, Axe, Legion, all these heroes that have stuns and some kind of team fight, but then they also do a ton of damage, where like something like Bristleback and Timbersaw, they're just kind of frontline tanks and do a ton of damage, but the team fight isn't necessarily there. And so that's kind of the thing, is they've just nerfed these heroes' damage a lot. So if they're not doing overwhelming damage, then they can feel kind of underwhelming, and that's what happens. Now, in some games, they're still B, so in some games you can still have a lot of impact, but still, it's not as broken as it once was. And then Night Stalker, very good in pubs, I think, overall. It's kind of the same problem with Slardar. I put them in a very similar kind of situation where Slardar has a problem flash farming until he gets shard at least, and Night Stalker almost never flash farms. So you really have to take advantage of the laning stage, really survive it, and then get 6, and then just dominate. And you can totally do that in a lot of different pub situations if you know what you're doing, because the enemy support, even the carry, just people people on the map are going to be out of position, and you can really take advantage of that in most pub situations. But again, because the team fight aspect, it's good for the silence, it's good for the nighttime, all the vision, that's great, but it just doesn't have what some of these other heroes have, and then you can fall off and have really bad games in a lot of different situations. So that's why Night Stalker's there. Then Magnus, the damage has decreased. The Ags, I don't think is nearly as good. You're probably not getting it ever now, maybe here and there. But again, it's just all utility. So it's basically no damage at all anymore. And so it's still decent. Like, this utility is great. The RP can never be counted out. The Blink Skewer is still good, all that kind of stuff. But I just think overall it's only B because there's just no damage anymore. And you're just utility, which can honestly turn games, but relying on that only can kind of feel awkward if you don't have damage at other parts of, in other positions. And that happens sometimes in some games, even though there are a lot of different carries these days. And then Primal Beast is kind of on the upswing, I think, with a lot of other things getting nerfed or just slightly nerfed. This hero was on the edge, and I was maybe underrating it. Maybe I put it D last time, and I was going to bump it up to C, but I was like, you know what? I think it's actually doing a little bit better. The win rate and the pick rate is improving, and I think you can definitely get away with it. Maybe it only deserves C. Maybe I'm overrating it a little bit, but I think on Dota 2 Pro Tracker, when I was looking, it had like a 53, 54% win rate, despite not getting picked a ton. So I get that, that's a very specific bracket and stuff, but I do think it's a very tanky hero. When you get to the late game, the ult is very good. The Ags and the Shard, yeah, I understand they have their problems at times, but I do think they are good in very different situations. So I think Primal Beast is definitely a good hero, but you could argue that it's C here, but it is, these are mid of the pack anyway. You could get away with it even if it's not the best. And then Wraith King has been on the decline as the carry from the offlane, but I still think going for the, pushing with the skeletons, going for the Ags, I still think that's the build. I just don't think it has as much impact, but in the lower MMRs, going Blade Mail, going Radiance, going Blink, going for Ags, going these things can definitely be viable, and you can totally win with it. I think the biggest thing to just think is, can they easily clear my skeletons? If they can, it's just not going to be a great game for Wraith King. Then Beastmaster kind of fell off a lot with recent nerfs, but is always going to be decent. It feels like it's just obviously the drums isn't the best anymore. Like, you were just blowing people up and killing people with that. It's hard to say. I'm not the biggest Beastmaster player, but it's hard to say whether you're still going to go for the farming and the drums, or if you're going to go just back for like the default build with the just getting the ancient creep with the Helm of the Overlord and stuff. I think you might be going for Helm of the Overlord more these days. And so the normal build, like in the last patch, when that was super nerfed, it kind of dropped down to C or even D tier. It was just really bad. People were like, okay, this is just dead now. But then I think people were realizing, oh, wait, you can still kind of pick the Helm of the Overlord one, and that's still decent, so we're bringing it back up, and now it's just B tier. Then Venge, I just am not a huge fan of Venge in general. It feels like if you have everything else taken care of in your team, then that's great. You can get your Ags, you can jump in, you can swap people in and out, and you can sacrifice yourself, and you can just wreak havoc. But I just don't love the self-sacrificial nature of this hero in general. Even though you can do some damage and be annoying, I'm not a huge fan of it. But I do think it deserves B. I think even before it was A, and I think it's along with Darkseer too. These are two heroes I kind of put them together that I'm just not big fans of in pubs. And so maybe you could say that it even deserves C, but the win rate is decent enough that I'm putting it at B. And same thing with Darkseer, kind of fell off a little bit. I think there were some nerfs there. It's still an okay hero, but again, even in pubs, I don't love it. So, my personal opinion would be to put it in like C or D now because it's not very good, but I understand the win rate's still decent, so I'm putting it up here. Then lastly, I feel like we have pro heroes, Doom and Enigma. Don't get me wrong, you can pick Doom and you can pick Enigma in your pubs, especially Enigma with the ultimate. These heroes, like, their ultimates are so good, you can never really count them out. But they just require a level of team play, and there is a level of awkwardness with the hero that doesn't play like other offlaners. That means that it's popular in pros because of what it does, but then in pubs, it can feel like you're not really doing much, or your impact is low, or, you just doom somebody and they run away or they get saved, and then there's not much you're doing, or Enigma never really gets the space to have the big ultimate or whatever because people aren't grouping up in that same kind of style, or, your team just never plays around you in a way that actually makes it work, and then you have one black hole that's good, but now it's on cooldown for a billion years, that kind of stuff. And so the team isn't taking advantage of those. When you kill the enemy team, they're not really pushing the advantage in that way. So that's why I think these heroes are good in general. You can still get away with them in pubs. They're still decent, but it's more of like a pro meta pick. Then next for C tier, we have a hero that's interesting. Probably one of the first times that Queen of Pain has actually been on the list. Now, it is only C tier. I probably wouldn't even have put it on the list if it didn't get to like D or F. Like if it was in D or F, I wouldn't even put it on here because I'm like, okay, it's not worth it. It's not worth introducing this hero. But when you get a new kind of hero or a hero that doesn't usually play these positions, it's worth putting it on the list if I feel like it's C, B, A, you know, any of these other mid to upper level rankings, and I feel like it is C. It does have actually a decent win rate and pick rate now as an offlaner. That's just because Queen of Pain is so good right now. And like I said in the mid-tier list, that Masochist build where you're going super squishy, blowing people up, that's not really the main build anymore. It's more of the bondage build where you're going for Blade Mail, you're going for Sange and Kaya, you're going for the tanky build that turns into more of a right-clicker and just frontlining, jumping in, being super annoying, being hard to bring down while also doing a ton of damage. So that kind of lends itself to being an offlaner, and just the fact that it's a ranged hero that has a lot of good, you know, harass spells, a blink for safety. The laning stage can be very, very good as well on the hero. So that's why it's only C tier. It's not the best, but you can totally pick it off lane. It can be a little bit grief at times, but it does work, especially with the bondage facet. And then next, a hero that I like, Necro. I just think in the off lane, it's awkward because you always want to get Radiance. If you're going Necro in the off lane and you're not buying Radiance, I just feel like, ugh, that's just, it kind of sucks. Okay, I guess maybe what are you going Yules and stuff, and then what are you going Shivas? I mean, that works. Don't get me wrong, it works, but because I think Radiance is just so good and you have to buy it in so many games, and I say this every time, the off lane Necro just feels weird. Also, the laning stage can just be absolutely abysmal in certain matchups. Sand King is just overall decent. You know, it's just a decent offlaner that, or just like your average typical offlaner that's just like okay. It's just not great. You know, you can take advantage of in lane in very specific matchups. If they buy Dust, you're just screwed in a lot of cases because you don't want to do the other facet. The other facet kind of sucks. And so then it's just like, okay, well, now we're initiating. We have magic damage. And the Ags is still very good if you get there. But it's just C tier. It's just okay. It's just like, I don't love having a Sand King on my team. I don't think it's going to dominate or own the game in the way some of these other heroes will. And then Pango can be very good if you get to the late stages of the game, if you get your items, but again, can be taken advantage of in lane very heavily and can get just off to an abysmal start in a lot of different situations. That's why it's C tier. More of a mid laner these days. Then Lycan, I feel like Lycan is just a worse version of Beastmaster in a lot of different situations, more of a right clicker, more of a carry from the off lane. I would say if you want to go carry from the off lane and not get like griefed or like people yell at you, I mean, obviously Abaddon, Marcy, these heroes are good. You can still pick Wraith King, Beastmaster, this kind of stuff, but if you want like a pocket hero that's sort of a little niche, but it's more of just a carry, but people will let you play it off lane, you can totally try to specialize in Lycan. The problem with the hero, again, no team fight, no real stun. You know, you're going to buy Helm of the Overlord probably, and then you might get a stun there or whatever. But even that, it's like, I mean, those big creeps aren't, I don't know. I don't love the big creeps, to be honest. Like, they're not my favorite thing. I don't think they do a ton. So it's just a little bit awkward, but you can just run people down, right-click them, have a lot of impact if you know what you're doing. But again, still only C tier as a specialist hero. Same thing with Brew. You can definitely play this hero if you're really good at it and know what you're doing. It is a specialist kind of cheese-ish hero, but I just don't think it's at a great spot. It's all about the Ags in terms of not necessarily that I'm saying you're buying Ags every game with this, but I think I say it every time. If the Ags is good on the hero, it makes the hero good. If it's not good, it's not a good hero, because even it doesn't even almost matter what the Ags is, because just let's say if you remove Ags from the hero, like even the concept, you remove the little guy that you had with you, or if you remove I think the other one was like a double ult, you just don't give an Ags to the hero. I think what the hero does is just not good enough to not have like this extra thing that it wants to do with an Ags, like a new ability or something, unless, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm not explaining it right, but it's just basically like this hero, because of the fundamental way that it works, where the ult is just so unique, it just has to have an Ags that works with that ult or in some tandem with the pandas in some way and makes it good. So whether it was the double ult before when it was broken and very good, or now when it's the little like, you know, sidekick guy, that has to be good for this hero to be good. And right now it's just not great. It's viable, or you might not even buy it. You might go Radiance or something, but in that case, then it's not. It's just like C tier, just okay. It's, you know, whatever. People are trying to bring Omni Knight back. I don't know if it's working. I don't know if it's real. It's getting picked a decent, not that much, a decent amount, like okay. Like it's not like unpicked at all. And the win rate is okay. So I'm putting it in C tier. You know, people were memeing that it was coming back, but I just don't believe it. I don't know. That's why it's only C tier. It's not D or F. It is sort of a thing. You can kind of play it, but I don't love it in general. Then we have Bat Rider, another one I keep talking about whenever I talk about it in the mid-tier list or now, or even if I put it in the support one. With the recent changes, it's come back into the meta, but again, I don't see it very much personally. It's not a super popular pick in pubs a lot of the time, and it's not good enough where it's getting spammed a bunch by people. So it is back, quote unquote, in a sense that it is okay, but it's not great. So that's why I think it definitely deserves C tier, especially when you look at the pick rate and win rate too. So it's not like F, it's not completely dumpster, but it's just okay. And then Phoenix, I think the problem with the offlane Phoenix is obviously it's good as a core. You can get away with it, but you know, you'd almost rather have it as a mid. Sometimes you can just like fall behind on farm, have a bad laning stage. And in those very specific situations, if you just don't have a great laning stage and you fall off as just an offlaner, you're not really a core anymore, you're more like a support, you might as well have just picked it as a support. And that's really the problem with the hero overall. Then next we have D tier, and the first hero in the D tier for the offlane is unfortunately Death Prophet. This hero had like, what, a month, 2 weeks in the sun, and then just absolutely got her entire legs, which does she even have legs? I don't know. They were chopped off, and now she's just crawling around, D tier, and it's just terrible. Maybe she's C tier, but I think just in the offlane specifically, she's D. Like, I just think she's not good. You'd probably rather have her in mid just because she can get more farm that way, where she's obviously not the farm priority in the offlane. I just think she has certain bad matchups and stuff like that in the offlane, in the laning stage, and now just she's kind of back to where she was. She's like still okay, but they just killed her. They dumpstered her. She had like 2 weeks and the patch just destroyed her, and now she's dead basically. DK kind of dead as well. Again, you can still pick it mid. You can still pick it off lane. Like, it's not like a grief, but it's just not where it was before, and it's just kind of really bad. Like, if I see a DK pick, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you griefing me? Underlord, I say this every time. People are trying to put it into the meta. People try to pick it and make it good, and it still has a 44% win rate or something like that. Like, people are like, I want to play the hero. I want it to be good. It's like, nope, it's just not good. It never is. It just feels like it's never good. It's never been good. It's never going to be good. I think maybe like when it was first introduced like 5 years ago, whenever it was, I think it was good for like 2 months or something, and just never been good other than that, no matter how much people try to make it work. And I like the hero. I like playing it, but it's just, whatever reason, it just is never good. And Spirit Breaker just feels better as like a 4 position. 3 position feels awkward. How are you really doing much with farm? You're kind of doing all the same stuff, so I don't think that's really, it's kind of a wasted position. Sort of like the Phoenix in a way, like I talked about. Just like, why pick it off lane? Just pick it as a 4 position. It's going to be better. Chaos Knight, weird hero, awkward. Is it a carry? Is it an off lane? Is it a support? What is it? Kind of does none of those things really well. Was pretty good maybe 6 months to a year ago when the illusions were good. Then those got nerfed, and now it's kind of just like dead. Clockwork, they're trying to force it to be like, I don't know, with the eating the chain mails or whatever. Is that a core? They're trying to force it to be a core, but that's not really a thing. Like, people were memeing with it, but it's still not good enough, I don't think, to really be above D tier. The only reason that it's not like F tier as an offlane really is because I guess you can go for that build and it's like fine-ish late or whatever, but still it's not great. Like, that's just, you're not getting there, to be honest. Like, you're not getting huge. You're not eating like 50 chain mails. It's just not happening. Wind Ranger, I was actually debating putting it C tier. I kind of like Wind Ranger offlane personally, but at the same time, it is one of those heroes that it feels like you're kind of griefing in a way. Like, it feels like, great, we have a Wind Ranger offlane. Everybody's a backliner. Everyone's squishy. Like, what's happening? And then Nature's Prophet, another one of those that it's a popular hero right now that people are like picking, but don't pick it offlane. Another one where you're just picking carry from the offlane. You're kind of griefing, and people are probably going to report you, so just don't do that. Venomancer, a hero I don't personally like as a core. I just hate it. Just pick it as a support and use all your spells and do a lot of damage. You don't need to get items. Like, it just doesn't work as a core. I hate it every time people try to like play it. Same with the Viper. Or not same thing, but same thing I said from the mid lane as Viper, not same thing as Veno, where this hero is just too slow, dominates the lane maybe for 5 minutes, and then just like, okay, now what are you doing? You're just like AFK farming? Are you ganking? Are you doing anything? No, you're not. Now, if you get to like 40 minutes and you have 6 items, or 50 minutes, you have 6 items, yeah, sure, you're going to be good, but like, that's just not happening because you just don't farm. Razor, I feel like you could make this work as an off lane, but again, just very awkward, has bad matchups, and sometimes it just feels like my Razor doesn't do anything. He has 2 items at 35 minutes, and why do I have a Razor on my team? And then Broodmother of the cheese picks, it's just kind of a bad one. I just don't think an off lane right now it does well. It's probably better as a mid laner, to be honest. Just not a great Brood patch in general. Then lastly, we have F tier. I was thinking about taking Dazzle out of the tier list altogether. You could argue that this should be taken out, but because people are still playing at mid, people are still playing with that kind of build that was, you know, popular a few months ago, I still think it deserves to be on the list, but it's still F tier. It's just garbage. I think it's not a good mid. I think it's not a good core in general. People are trying to bring it back, but no. And then Visage is just like fell off a cliff, and it just, I think the win rate is like 30% or something ridiculous from the off lane. So it's just really bad right now, so I put it there. Tiny, just again, off lane. This hero is kind of in the dumpster in general. I mean, it's like as a carry and as a mid, it's like C or D. It's just not good. So as an off lane, especially, and that's only good when it's like a very, very good hero, it's just bad. So I was even debating taking this off the list. Bounty Hunter, another one that it's kind of been on the downtrend, especially as a core. It's just not good and hasn't been good. So I keep it on here, but just don't pick Bounty off lane. Alchemist, not really an off laner. Again, not a great patch for Alchemist. So then it's like Tiny, where you're only picking it off lane if it's a great patch for that hero, and it's just not good. So pick it, or don't pick it off lane. And also feeding ags to people, like that's just don't do that. Lone Druid, just again, not a hero that's very good right now. So even as a cheese, like, you know, situational kind of specialist pick is not great in general, but it's probably more of a mid laner. Off lane just feels awkward. Like you're just kind of sacking the lane and you're just trying to play carry and it's not going to work. And then Tusk is just really popular right now as a support, but I don't think it's a good off lane overall, so I'm going to put it F. You might argue, hey, you can put the Tusk like D or C, but whatever. I'm just saying pick it as a support, not as an off laner. And also, the last thing I will say is I had like Faceless Void on here. I think I had a couple other heroes on here that I just completely took off the list because I'm like, these heroes just aren't off. Like, we're not picking that stupid Void build anymore. So Faceless Void is not an offlaner. Like, get it off the list completely. There's a couple of those if you go back and look. So that, everyone, is the offlane tier list for patch 7.39C. As always, if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.